So hello to everybody. I'm Susanna Bâton. I'm the president and CEO of Business Publications Corporation, and it's my pleasure to welcome you here today to Envision Iowa. We are delighted that you can join us. It's been a busy day with many, I think, big events that have been happening throughout the day. Maybe hearing more about. So thank you for being here. So I think many of you know, but some people might be wondering, what is Envision Iowa? This is the third year for Envision Iowa, which is an initiative that BPC created ultimately to help Iowa thrive and grow. We started this during the pandemic when we sort of looked around and asked ourselves as a media company, are we doing everything that we can to support Iowa's economic recovery and our future economic growth? So out of a series of focus groups, we created this initiative focused on three key themes: people and culture, business opportunities, and infrastructure. And each year we've held three think tanks. Many of you have been a part of those virtually, and an in-person event. And then we've had ongoing coverage of economic development issues. And the whole thing has been so well received that we brought it back year after year, really focusing on the same themes that affect Iowa companies and communities. Our goal is really very simple here. It's to strengthen Iowa's business and economic community through strategic connections, powerful storytelling, and by amplifying the message of Iowa. We believe that that will lead to collaboration and action among leaders. As a media company, we highlight stories of interesting, innovative, and unique places and spaces and ideas happening right here in Iowa. And we elevate key economic development conversations through our statewide publications of the Business Record, our statewide Innovation Iowa publication, our statewide arts and culture focused magazine, IA, both in print and digital. You'll see these publications on your table: the weekly Business Record and the annual IA magazine on the table right here in front of you. And we are actually unveiling IA magazine right here. Actually, the first ones to see it. It will be distributed later. But it started by our founder, Connie Weimer, to showcase Iowa. This annual magazine really tells the story of arts and culture, food and dining, destinations. So if you're recruiting and you're trying to attract people to Iowa, or if you're looking to tell the story, really just have a pride piece in Iowa, that is what IA is. And I could not be more excited about this year's stunning issue. So we hope that you'll check it out when you have some time. I think these stories will make you proud to be from Iowa. And we hope that the magazine and the bi-monthly e-newsletter are not just enjoyable, but tools that you can use to recruit and retain talent. So hand these out to anybody who you think would be interested. So please join me in a big round of applause to the entire BPC team and the magazine team who worked on these things for their wonderful work on this initiative, for our publications, and the beautiful issue of health. So here's how the agenda is going to work today. We're going to hear from our sponsors, and then Director Durham, Director of IEDA and IFA, is going to kick us off with a mini keynote on the state of economic development right here in Iowa, and we're always thrilled to hear from Debi. Then we're very pleased to be showing you the second Envision Iowa Statewide Leaders Economic Development Survey. See how easily I can say that now, that long name, which we have done once again in partnership with Bâton Global, which is a global leading research and strategy firm based right here in Iowa. You are going to be the first to hear these high-level results from Chawla, who is a managing partner at Bâton Global, along with a panel of statewide leaders, some of whom participated in the think tanks and others who are just leaders that you probably know, and they'll be responding to the survey findings. What I want to do is, before we get into it, is really emphasize that there are many, many groups all across Iowa that are doing work to advance our economy and to advance economic development in our state. You're going to hear from Debi on that. We know Joe Murphy and the folks at the Iowa Business Council, other agencies. agencies, the partnership here, chambers and economic development folks all across the state are doing work all the time to really build and advance our state. And so what we're going to be doing here today is exploring what we need to build on and support the work that is happening and align towards common goals and common action to move Iowa forward. That's what we're here to discuss. And after the panel, we're going to actually go into table discussion. So you'll have a chance to mix and mingle with colleagues or new friends. And so if you've got questions for the panelists or for Debbie, we may have a little time for Q&A as that ends. And I am now very pleased to turn it over to Chris Konetsky, who is the group publisher of Business Publications Corporation. He's going to sort of walk you through the next part of the program. So Chris.
Thank you, Susanna. Thank you to all of you that are here with us tonight. And of course, going to be pulling this together, this type of programming without the support of the many sponsors that have helped support not only tonight, but also the entire series as well. So in addition to our presenting sponsor, IEDA, who's been with us from the very start, our think tank sponsors, Adreain, and the many organizations powering the series of our corporate supporters. We've got 3 terrific visionary sponsors who came on board over the past couple of years, who have been with us and are here again, once again, to help support the journey. You're going to hear a little bit from each of them. The first is the Des Moines International Airport, which has had quite a bit of lately. The international airport is growing, adapting, and changing to meet the evolving needs of the traveling public. The airport authority works to improve the quality of air service and make air travel to and from Iowa more convenient and pleasurable. And it took a big step in that direction earlier today with the official groundbreaking ceremony this morning at the new terminal. So with us, fresh from that groundbreaking, is Kevin Foley, Executive Director of the Des Moines Airport.
Thank you, Chris. Thanks for stealing my thunder. Yeah, we did have a big day today. It was a memorable event and a big event that went off very well. The rain stayed off, so it's thinking for this presentation, in short presentation, that if it rained today, it would just be one more hurdle that we have to climb and get to this point. So, in 2014, the study was completed that envisioned a new terminal. That study said that we needed a new terminal for capacity reasons and because of the age of the old terminal. 9 years later, we finally had our groundbreaking. There's been a lot of activity in between there. Most of it the public couldn't see, but there was a lot of construction going on to get to this point to make room for the new terminal. And it's been a long journey. And that journey is going to continue. It's still going to be a long journey to get everything completed. In fall of 2022, the Bureau of Aviation with the Iowa Department of Transportation commissioned a study of the impact of aviation on the state of Iowa. In total, I believe it's $6.4 billion is what the impact is. But it also looked at the individual airports. Des Moines has a $752 million annual impact on the state of Iowa. That's the economic impact that we have. So as we move forward on that journey that I'm talking about and getting over hurdles, it's important that we continue to look for the most prudent way and most inexpensive way to get this terminal built. And one of those ways is the airport authority approached Polk County and asked them about modeling on our behalf. In September, they passed a resolution to allow a referendum on the November ballot. That vote or that effort will generate these savings by, as estimated by 2 individual analysis, of about $70 million over the life of the loan. I'm very appreciative of Polk County and their support. Our goal is to build a state-of-the-art terminal that elevates the passenger experience. We want to do that as prudently and inexpensively as possible. At the same time, because we're Iowans and we're all pretty prepped in. So with that, I would say thank you to Stan and Chris for the opportunity to speak tonight, and wish you all a good night.
I think you meant to send it out and vote in November. All right, our next sponsor is the Iowa Business Council, which is an organization of CEOs and top executives from the 22 largest employers in Iowa, which serves as a catalyst to elevate Iowa's long-term economic vitality through global thought leadership, research, and advocacy. Joe Murphy is the executive director. He's got over a decade of government affairs, political advocacy, and public relations experience. He's active in the community on many boards. Of course, probably read from him in our publications, and he's been involved in some of the think tanks as well. So please welcome Joe to the stage.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you, Chris, for the introduction. We are just so thrilled to be here tonight and sponsor the Iowa Envision, the Envision Iowa series. We're so thrilled to be supporting a project that brings data, research, and unvarnished information to not only policymakers, but people of Iowa as well. As Chris mentioned, the Business Council is an association comprising the top CEOs and executives from some of Iowa's largest companies, with the mission to ensure and enhance Iowa's economic vitality for every Iowan. And so, yes, while it's true that we do represent big business in the state of Iowa, I stand before you today to remind you that while many of our companies are engaged with Wall Street and traded on Wall Street, every single Iowa Business Council member is investing in Iowa Main Street each and every single day. And I think that's an important point to remind us all on a daily basis. In fact, we employ more than 150,000 Iowans all across the state and a payroll approaching $9 billion, more than $3 billion in capital investment, research and development all throughout our counties, and millions of dollars in philanthropic activities throughout our state, as well as tens of thousands of volunteer time off, tens of thousands of hours of volunteer time off all throughout our communities. So we're proud to be here tonight, as I've said. We're proud to work alongside so many in this room on all of these activities. Thanks again to the Business Publications Corporation for bringing this event forward, and I look forward to the event. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Our final sponsor tonight is the Iowa Credit Union League, which is the nonprofit credit association representing the interests of Iowa State and federally chartered credit unions and their more than 1 million members. As you know, credit unions are a non-for-profit financial cooperative that is only governed by its members. In addition to serving their members, credit unions provide direct impact to the communities in which they operate and contribute over $1 billion to the state economy. With us here today from the Iowa Credit Union League is the organization's vice president, Jimmy Miller. Please welcome David.
Okay, I know I'm saying to me, everyone having some fun in this week's fabulous panelists, so I'll try to keep my remarks short and sweet here. So good evening, good afternoon. Our CEO, Murray Williams, was unable to join this evening, but on his behalf, wanted to express his sincere thanks to the Iowa Business Record team and to the team of the Iowa Finance Authority and the Iowa Economic Development Authority for all of the hard work that we do to bring groups together and opportunities like this to really think about the future of our state. And I think we would all agree, although we don't have mountains and we don't have beaches, our economic opportunities are diverse. We do have opportunities, and vibrant communities and a strong workforce are crucial to our future. I think we can all agree on that. Credit unions understand firsthand how these issues like infrastructure, workforce, and financial empowerment are essential to Iowa communities and helping us all thrive. By working together, we know that we can effectively address economic barriers and economic opportunity for all. And so now I'm going to talk a little bit about our impact from Iowa credit union perspective. Nearly 50% of Iowans, so it's more than 1.4 million people in Iowa, are members of our credit unions, and probably most of the folks in this room. Credit unions contribute nearly $2 billion in our state's economy each year.
And collectively, Iowa credit unions put back more than $160 million back into individual pockets of members across the state. And so there's more opportunity. We know there's more work to be done, and we're supporting that in advocacy initiatives at the State House. We're supporting that in the investments that credit unions are making in their local communities and across the state. And we are proud to champion and support financial well-being and empowerment for all families. And as we look ahead, let's look for these opportunities. Let's invest in our state and our future, and let's continue to build a prosperous and vibrant Iowa for generations to come. Thank you.
Thank you again to the Iowa Business Council, the Iowa Airport Authority, and the Credit Union League for helping make this event possible. It's always great to have partners. Speaking about when you've got partners that align with the thing that you're trying to help make happen. And so each of those partners, as you can see from their messages and from what they're working on, are tackling identified problems in this community and state, and have been working on them to help make the state a better place for us to live and work and do business. So we're really proud to partner with each of you. So thank you. All right, let's go ahead and get started with our kickoff keynote. Debi Durham. Debi is the Executive Director of the Iowa Economic Development Authority and the Iowa Finance Authority. She is one of the visionary movers and shakers here in Iowa. She was first appointed to lead IEDA in 2011 and since turned the agency into a successful public-private partnership, landed $1 billion development projects, and worked tirelessly on expanding trade and investment opportunities for the state. Her roots and her home are in Sioux City, where she is was the president of the Soybean Chamber. Her many awards are a testament to the contribution she has made and continues to make to the state. Please welcome Debi, who's going to kick us off.
Well, thank you, Chris, and good evening. And a special thank you to Business Publication for bringing us together and challenging each of us to imagine the future of life. This series always leaves me feeling both reflective and inspired. You know, we're here because we call Iowa home. Maybe you were born here, or maybe your path led you here, like mine did. I came here as the trailing spouse for my husband's career. Now, for being the state's chief salesperson, I'll admit I wasn't sold on Iowa at first. In fact, I told Joel I was going to stay for 3 years. I think my exact words were with or without you. And here we are 30 years later. Right? The truth is, it actually didn't take me long for Iowa to feel like home. The connection was almost instant. It started with our neighbors who brought over all these baked goods and invited us to neighborhood gatherings. Honestly, I thought they were just relieved we bought the eyesore fixer-upper house on the block that was driving down all the property rates, right, or values. And then it was our church, and then it was the school, which immediately drafted me into the PTA. And once I got involved in the Soybean Chamber of Commerce, I realized how truly welcoming Iowa is. I started out in the government relations role, not knowing anyone, right? A business leader who is now my dear friend. In fact, we do family gatherings together at holidays. It's part of our Iowa extended family, took me under her wing. And she immediately started introducing me to Iowa. One of those people was Governor Ranstead. For some reason, who took an interest in me, became my mentor, and is the one that put me in this role today. And we can say the rest is history. So I learned early on in Iowa, we understand the value of human connection and relationship. I like to say we have 1 degree of separation, not 6. Access to mentors and leaders is often just simply a phone call away. And so is a helping hand when we need it. In Sioux City in those years ago, I knew I was moving into a community where everyone mobilizes in a crisis. Following the Flight 232 plane crash, people lined up around blocks to donate blood without ever being asked. When a derecho tore through Iowa in 2020 and devastated communities, especially the immigrant communities in Cedar Rapids, the nonprofit Catherine McCauley Center transformed into a temporary shelter for refugees and immigrants. Donations poured in from around the state, washer and dryers, food and supplies of all kinds. And think about what else was happening 3 years ago. Everyone was hunkered down at home. We hadn't seen each other in months except our faces on a computer screen. And one of the biggest tests of our professional lives, together we built a roadmap for a stronger Iowa. The governor challenged a group of Iowans from the private and public sectors to deliver bold recommendations to help our economy not only rebound, but actually thrive. Those recommendations took our state priorities and made them into imperatives. And we backed them up with historic investments in all things we've been talking about during these Envision Iowa series. We're working to keep our key industries like advanced manufacturing competitive. We're offering up more project-ready location, and our pipeline today is stronger than it's ever been. We lead the nation for energy, generating renewable resources. Because just like companies reporting, we understand that sustainability is the cost of doing business today. And I would tell you, it's also the key to workforce attraction. Iowa startup scene is absolutely booming, with more private investment in the ecosystem now than I have ever seen in my lifetime. And it's spreading beyond our university research parks and our corridors. Earlier this year, Carroll County moved forward on a first-of-a-kind rural resource center for startup businesses, which IEDA was proud to support with an entrepreneurial investment board. We're taking on Iowa's workforce shortage as well to help employers find solutions, grow our own workers, attract talent from other states. Our communities are playing to their strength and to create a unique places where people want to live and to visit, from beautiful parks and trails to art installations and cultural centers. And through our marketing, for the first time, we're telling the rest of the country all about it. Iowa's made unprecedented investments in our state's infrastructure to support growth, to build out our broadband, and strengthen our transportation corridors. In fact, with us tonight is Director Margaret, DOT, my good friend. And many of us together did gather today, Kevin, to do the groundbreaking of the new terminal. Because if you think about it, it is truly the most prominent welcome center we have in the state. We're moving the needle on those shortages areas. But to reach our goals, we have to get more targeted. For example, we have opened up thousands of new childcare slots around the state, exposing our newest challenge, before and after school care, right? Now, yet we have all of these schools, and the question should be, why aren't we offering the service before and after school there, right? When you think about it, because we're a national leader in the share of households with both working parents. In a state that lost 33% of our childcare businesses in recent years. On the housing front, new data show we need 25,000 housing units to meet our goals by 2030. That's down from 42,000. That's great news, except exposing a different challenge, showing us that the bulk of that 25,000 needs to be single-family homes. And I would tell you, even owner-occupied single-family homes. So all our strategies will continue to evolve. We absolutely have the right priorities in place. That I am sure of. These investments and so many others are paying off in economic growth and quality of life. Iowa is a national leader for opportunity, cost of living, and housing affordability. A top 10 state to live and raise a family. We're moving from one of the least competitive states for taxes to one of the most. So I have to say, I was a bit surprised when I saw a preview of the research that will be presented tonight by our good friend, Bâton. The research is a barometer of our optimism in many of these areas I talked about. And we've lost some momentum, as it seems. You know, it's hard to talk about Iowa's economy against the national backdrop. And that backdrop is, quite frankly, unsettling. Our country is navigating labor shortages and unrest. A federal spending flight that nearly shut down the government once again is now residing in some kind of power struggle that we sit on the sidelines so disappointed and frustrated. Persistent inflation and soaring consumer prices and geopolitical strife and so much more. 3 years ago, the biggest threat to our country was a global pandemic. Today, I worry it is the loss of connection to our communities, to our faith, and quite frankly, to each other. I thought about this during the last Envision Iowa think tank and then during the breakout session. One small group was talking about mental health challenges that we're seeing nationwide and across Iowa. And if I'm honest with you, my whole family has faced those challenges. We are wired to connect as human beings and as Iowans and as community. Iowa sits in an enviable position nationally. But if people aren't feeling that, we must look at how we're connecting with each other. So look around this room. Everyone here is engaged, invested. That's why we're all here tonight. And it's up to us to help others connect as well. Because when people feel connected where they live, a genuine sense of belonging, they want to give back. Actually, there's research to prove this. It's called the science of generosity. Isn't that a beautiful thing? The science of generosity from the University of California in Berkeley. But to build that sense of belonging, we must be authentic. We must be willing to be vulnerable with each other. We have to embrace what makes our communities unique. And then also, even if that makes us uncomfortable. And Iowa looks different today. We've seen a 42% increase in the people of color over the last decade. Buena Vista will be our first county in the state of Iowa. It's on track by the year 2026. We're the first county with a majority non-white population. Illinois is the only Midwestern state that has diversified faster than Iowa in recent years. Now, in this job, I'm on the road 2 to 3 days a week, visiting communities across the state of all sizes. And I see success stories everywhere I go. But I also tend to see the same people in decision-making sitting around the table that I saw 20 years ago. If we want to grow, if we want to connect with our people, I've always said economic development deals are won and lost at the local level. Our communities must understand not just what they want, but who they are. Ernesto Ciroli, an expert in local economic development, said the future of every community lies in capturing the passion, the imagination, and the resources of its people. So in closing, let me tell you about a community that understands this, and that's Marshalltown. It has been rebuilding from both a tornado and a derecho that wiped out most of the historic downtown and neighborhoods. The community leaders came together and they challenged themselves to approach every part of their development plan with creativity and extensive community engagement. And here's a powerful example. What started out as a very simple idea for a splash park evolved into something beautiful and unique to Marshalltown's story, a water plaza that celebrates the arts and the city's growing cultural diversity. People of color make up 40% of their population. And in the Latino culture, a plaza or gathering space represents the very heart of the community. However, in the Burmese culture, water is a sacred symbol of cleansing the mind, the body, and the spirit. It is celebrated in an annual water festival that had to be held outside of town. So this new water plaza will pull the festival into the community in a central gathering space that connects all of Marshalltown's people with art installations and cultural events and a recreation for all year long. The water plaza is the signature project of the proposal that won Destination Iowa funding earlier this year. In the application, the city said, and I quote, "Creating authentic reflection of our community is the key in building attraction, connectedness, and pride." Now, I think the greatest thing about Envisioning Iowa is that we're doing it together. So I want to thank you all for making Iowa your home and for making your community stronger. And when we leave tonight, reflective, inspired, maybe a bit challenged, let's pledge to do it and stay connected. Thank you.
Thank you, Debbie. As always, comments right on point and help tee up the next portion of our program. And I know you're going to enjoy hearing from Kavi. I want to pause on something. You definitely mentioned more targeted. That's what I underlined. I also like the science of generosity, so I'm going to have to go learn a little bit about that. But more targeted. IEA's leadership and partnership in this initiative was aimed at bubbling up and helping to identify the challenges and helping us to identify challenges for today, but also the ones for tomorrow, and helping ensure we have a strong economic future. Our job is to help provide news and information to help everybody in this room, to help the community make better decisions about what that future can look like. And I've always really appreciated Debi and the IDA team that when there are challenges, when there's things in the data that don't look great, you're one of the best cheerleaders for the state, right? That's in your job description. But that approach, you do that without doing it in a way that shies away from those challenges. So I appreciate the way that you've done that, and you've bubbled up a few of the ones that we're going to talk about here tonight. We're excited to get into the data now, and I have Kavi help do that. A couple of years ago, we got feedback from the first round of Envision Iowa. The first time it was really just to help get people together and bubble up those ideas up to the surface. And we got feedback from folks saying they wanted a little bit more clear picture of how statewide leaders felt about the economic outlook across a broad spectrum of areas. So we began working with our partners at Bâton Global, and together we put together a survey with the goal of using data to help illuminate an aggregated outlook for the future of Iowa, and the objective of supporting business and organizations in making commercial investments and public policy decisions that could positively impact Iowa's long-term economic performance. The survey was so well received, we decided to go ahead and do it again this year so that we can start building some trend lines and also add some new wrinkles in as well. The survey focused on 3 critical themes that drive state-level economic performance: people, culture, business opportunities, and infrastructure. And within each of those 3 themes, the survey asked questions on 4 sub-themes that capture the most pressing issues on Iowa's economic performance agenda. Answers were then analyzed by Bâton Global, compared against underlying key performance indicators commonly used by Iowa leaders to measure Iowa's performance. What I can promise you is that there is not nearly enough time, unless we sat you down for a week or two, to dig through each and every one of those data points. Kavi's going to do his best to help lead you through it. There's way more than we're going to be able to digest today. So this week's business record on your table, everybody has one. You'll find a summary of the report's key findings, and also the QR code that you can download the full report. That's where you'll see some of those key performance indicators as well, so you can see how we stack up on a couple of different measures that our organizations collectively use. But for today, here's how we're going to help you start to explore the findings. To help guide you through today, I want to formally introduce Chawla. He's the architect of the report. He's a partner with Bâton Global and has spent the majority of his career as a strategy advisor and consultant to private and public sector organizations, supporting them with development and execution of their global growth strategies. His regional expertise is focused in high growth markets, especially the Middle East, South and Southeast Asia, and Sub-Saharan Africa. Kavi is also a partner in Impact Investment Partners, a London-based FCA-regulated asset management and investment advisory company, and the co-founder of Durham. He holds a bachelor's in economics, history, and political science from Drake University, a master's in international affairs from the School of International and Public Affairs at Columbia University, and a master's in business administration from the University of Chicago, the School of Business. A lot of education. He's active in the community and also speaks at finance, human capital, and social entrepreneurship events globally, and authors a monthly column on innovation and finance. He's going to serve as your tour guide today, help shepherd you through some of the key high-level findings in 2 separate, or a keynote here, and then we're going to hear from our great group of panelists who are going to help provide some of their initial takeaways from the day. Let's give Kavi a big round.
As the tour guide is a good tour guide, I would like to pick up where your last tour guide was. So Debi left the stage talking about the next. In 1956, the United States faced an existential threat from the Soviet Union. So President Dwight D. Eisenhower was faced with a challenge. How do you create connection across a beautiful, huge, diverse country like the United States? So again, in 1956, for the first time in the U.S.'s history, President Eisenhower created an official motto for the U.S. 4 words: Anybody know what those are? Anybody have a dollar bill? Or coin? In God we trust. So for our session today, I'd like to add 4 more words to that one. In God we trust. Everyone else, bring data. So today, we're going to bring you some data. So with that, I'd like to turn to the 3 key objectives that we hope to deliver with the collection of this data. So the first is, when you look at the survey, is number 1, to just inform leaders about the future state of Iowa based on their perceptions. Number 2 is to then use that information to support leaders in making key decisions that positively impact the future of our state. And number 3, much like we're going to have today, is to create opportunities to bring leaders together, to have robust, honest, and using the term Debi used, authentic conversations to develop aligned solutions. So as we walk through today, the data today, I'm going to ask you to keep 3 things in your mind, just kind of bouncing around in the back. Number 1, why is it that leaders have the outlooks that you will see in this data? Number 2, ask yourself, what is your outlook? And number 3, how does the outlook compare to the actual quantitative, ideally predictive data that you may have at your organization? So keep those 3 things bouncing around in your mind as I walk through some of the high-level ones. But first, I'll just share a couple of statistics around the participation in the survey in 2023. So what the map shows, we have representation from a large number of counties across the entire state. The survey went out to over 3,000 leaders across business, communities, public sector, economic development, and publicly elected officials. And we had very good representation from urban, suburban, and rural leaders. As Chris mentioned in his comments, there were 3 key themes that we cover in the survey: population and culture, business opportunity and infrastructure. Again, up there on the screen, you can see those sub-themes. Again, we're not going to cover each of those in detail today, but we will be hitting on the salient key highlights of each of those major themes. So with that, let's dig into the data. So first, I'd like to start with the business opportunities out. And the top line takeaway when it comes to business opportunities theme is there's a tremendous amount of cautious optimism in the state. But I'd like to start with where did the optimism come from? So when you look at the slide up on the screen, what you're seeing is a question we asked around the 5 core industries of the state. And as you can see in the blue and the brown bar lines in the graph, there's a lot of optimism around the current strategies that we have across the state and current practices. Right? Those 2 questions are asking that current strategies will or might lead to growth in those industries. That's a great point of departure. And we have a really strong economic foundation. Now, if I were to interpret the data, I would say that that outlook exists for a few reasons. Number 1, it exists because the state has been very deliberate in identifying key industries and build clusters over the last 10 to 15 years to ensure those core industries are strong and thriving. Number 2, I would also posit that the private sector has rallied and partnered with the state through organizations like IPC to ensure that resources, education, talent strategies, infrastructure strategies are aligned to ensure these core industries are thriving. So again, that's a really good interpretation. And I think it provides a really strong base for our economy and a thriving Iowa. And again, we would interpret that that's what drives the optimism, which then leads to the question, where is the caution coming from? So when we go to the next slide, the caution is coming from 2 key factors. Number 1 is we ask the question about innovation and strategies and practices around innovation in driving a thriving Iowa. And number 2, we ask about entrepreneurship. So as you see up there on the slide again, the blue and the brown are an interpretation or the viewpoint, the outlook at current strategies and practices around innovation on, I guess, your left and entrepreneurship on your right. Current strategies will lead to a thriving. As you see, there is not a lot of optimism around current strategies, so there's a lot of calls for changes to those strategies. Now, again, as you interpret this data, I'd like to remind you again of some of those questions I asked you to keep in mind as we walk through this. Right, again, when you look at some of the quantitative information, over the last couple of years, there's been a tremendous amount of work in innovation. right? And yet, the outlook is not positive when it comes to current strategies and practices. Again, this data doesn't capture why, but it is highlight that there is a gap there between, again, what we are seeing in the economy and what people, leaders are perceiving as they look out over the coming years, right? But again, these two factors are a driver of the caution when we look at business opportunities and ventures. In moving to the next major theme of infrastructure, there are three key words when it comes to infrastructure: invest, invest, and invest. So we'd like to start with one of the first sub-themes of infrastructure, which is communication. If you recall, going into COVID, a lot of federal dollars were created, and with the Greater Des Moines Partnership and across the state, there was a lot of investigation around how do we invest in communications infrastructure, in particular broadband. Over the last few years, amongst the public sector and private sector, there's been roughly $780 million invested in communications infrastructure across our state. And as we're seeing here, there's a lot of high up at 60+% of optimism that current strategies and practices, again, across 24, 26, and 28, when it comes to communications infrastructure. Right? So investment was made, that's highly reflected in people's perception and in leaders' outlook in that particular vein of infrastructure. So again, there, I think that's a good win in that investment was made, and it's led to a very positive outlook when it comes to communications infrastructure. When we look at two other key aspects of physical infrastructure, in particular energy and transportation, we don't necessarily see the same story. There, as you see, again, the light blue line in the graph in the middle, there is quite a bit of desire to change, right? So again, when I interpret that data, that current strategies and practices have worked. That being said, for a thriving Iowa in the future, more investment, more change needs to be made, right? And again, let me be very clear, when we say investment, we don't necessarily mean dollars alone, right? Again, these are really looking at new strategies and practices. So part of it is bringing thought capital to think about how do we change the way we approach some of these problems. And all problems are not solved by writing larger checks, right? So again, this indicates that when it comes to two key levels of infrastructure, in particular, energy and transportation, there needs to be some reinvestigation of our current strategies and practices. But overall, there's still a relatively positive sector. Now, when we turn to the issue of social infrastructure, this is where the data clearly tells us we need change, right? As you've heard, there's a housing shortage, shows up there again. And when we look at childcare, education, and health, right? And what you're seeing up here is, again, in this graph, the blue and the brown and the light blue and the gray all represents different years. The blue is 23, the dark blue one, your left, it's 23. The brown is 24, the light blue is 26, and the gray is 28, right? And again, here, what we're showing up on the screen is the responses around the needs to change current strategies and practices that have a thriving Iowa when it comes to these dimensions of social infrastructure. And you see across all of them, it's close to 60+%. Now, for most of you as leaders who run businesses involved in government or economic development, this data is probably not surprising in any way. We've been hearing about it for 2 to 3 years. A lot of these trends were accelerated by COVID. But what this does tell us, if I were to interpret the data, is that leaders need and want change, and they are very robust in their declaration of it needs to happen, and it needs to happen now, or it threatens the future of our state. So again, keep that in mind as you think about social infrastructure. Now I'd like to turn to the final of our 3 dimensions, which is people and culture. And again, as a researcher, this is our most concerning, right? People and culture is an existential threat to this state. If we think about how do we address this issue. And again, what we're seeing up here, again, if you look at that light blue line, again, it is the need for change, right? And again, as we look out to 2024, our current strategies are maybe working, starting to create some change. There's still a higher level of optimism when compared to 26 and 28. But again, almost 50% demand for change in terms of our current strategies and practices. When we look at 2026, that jumps to 52, 53%, and roughly the same when we look at 2028. So what that indicates to me is, again, when you interpret that data, is that if we can't grow Iowa's population over time, it's going to become increasingly challenging to be able to build a thriving Iowa for all Iowans. But what it also indicates to me is that there is an opportunity here. Again, there is current optimism for the next year, but between now and 26 and 28, there's an opportunity to take action if we really want to start to drive that outlook that people have, in particular leaders, when it comes to population. And that opportunity and outlook is perhaps more personified when we go to the next slide around workforce. And here you see meeting Iowa's workforce needs change from current strategies and practices. And again, when you look at 2024, roughly 54% of leaders surveyed say yes, we need to have some changes to current strategies and practices. If we look at a thriving Iowa in 24, again, that jumps up to over 62% when it goes to 26, right? So again, there's some comfort with current strategies, probably need some tweaks, but over the next 3 to 5 years, we need to make some radical changes to how we approach this. Now, once we've looked at kind of the quantitative and qualitative data around how some other cities and states address this sort of issue, growing population and addressing workforce needs are really, really hard. There are long-term problems with long-term cycles, and most of the population movement and workforce issues are driven by external factors well beyond individual companies' control and well beyond state and public policy makers. So again, if I had to interpret kind of that opportunity for change, it's that we've got to remain committed to addressing these problems if we're going to change both perception and outlook, which then ultimately will change the outlying impact and results as a thriving state. So with that, we'll kind of go to one of the final slides, which is just, again, a summary of those 3 areas, right? So again, from the business opportunities, there is cautious optimism amongst leaders. When it comes to infrastructure, there are some tweaks around physical, particularly energy and transportation, but social infrastructure needs some change in investment now. And when it comes to population growth and workforce, those are existential threats to the state. We don't change our strategies and practices over the next 3 to 5 years, we risk losing that momentum we currently have. So as I conclude, we'd like to just go to the next slide. And there I have a couple of challenges for you. Challenge 1. I've walked through the data. We've got more details of it in the business record that are on your tables. There's a QR code at the end of this that you can download the full report. So the first challenge is, now that you have the information, once you've had a chance to consume it, reflect on it, what are you going to do about it? In our role as researchers, as I said, was to provide you the data. Right? We trust everyone else for data, we brought you the data. So now you have to do something with it if you want to drive change. The second challenge that I have for you is to ask yourself, how are you as an individual leader going to lead with vision for the future of Iowa, for the future of thriving Iowa? And the third challenge, which I would argue is the most important one, is how are you going to invite the next generation of Iowans to lead with vision for our future? Because if we don't do that, we're going to be in a tougher spot than we are today. Thank you. With that, I'll turn it back over to you.
See what all those degrees went to. All right, we're going to turn to our panel now today. I'm going to do this. It's not quite a panel discussion, but we're going to give each of them an opportunity to respond to what they heard today. Before they do, I want to give them a little bit of cover. They're, of course, not going to try to answer for the entirety of the report. Is that okay with you guys? Okay, that's good. I'm sure you read it all the way through each data point, right? That's not really the point of what we're going to do today. Again, there's way too much there for us to get too deep into today, but rather we wanted to be sort of a live initial reflection of the report. They got a sneak peek at some of the data, but they had not heard Covey's presentation, so they truly are here to help us just digest and provide them in terms of some of the things that the report was helpful prompt for them, and perhaps what additional questions or inspiration that we might need for exploring in the future. Again, this is a roadmap. It's to help us be more targeted. That's the purpose of this report, is to help give opportunities for us to look and dive in and ask questions about incongruencies within the data and between things that we see. So we're going to go ahead and do that a little bit right now. So with us today is Dr. I'm going to go in order here. The script is off a little bit. So all the way down to the end, we have Matt Herman, Senior Director of Renewable Products Marketing at the Iowa Soybean Association. Let's give him a nice warm welcome. Dr. Adreain, President of the Mercy College of Health Sciences. Dan Culhane is the President and CEO of the Ames Chamber and Economic Development Commission. And Lauren, Head of Worldwide Communications at Kemin Industries. So we asked them each to provide a quick response to answer the following questions. So, what surprised you most? What concerned you the most? And what is most urgent for leaders to address for Iowa in order to advance? Adrian decided he's going down script. The other folks are going to answer from their seats, but he needed to stand up here and vote. How's that in Adrian, come on.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Susanna. Thank you, BBC. Well, good evening, everyone. Well, we got to take that back now. Now, let me tell you, Susanna told me that this was a lively crowd. It's active. We're going to have a conversation, and they're going to love you. You're going to love them. So, what I decided, I had to answer 3 questions. So, I decided I would just do 2 scripts. So, one would be I would answer the 3 questions. And if I didn't get the response from the audience when I say good evening, I thought I'd spend my whole 5 minutes on working on getting the right response from the audience. So are you all ready? So we're either going to get the right response when I say good evening, everyone. You're going to match my energy. So this is how we do it at the college. Are you ready? Are you ready? Yeah. Okay. Good evening, everyone. So you guys are going to say what I said. Good evening, everyone. What I'm talking about, now you see why I love Iowa. Thank you for that. So let me do what I've been asked to do. Well, Susanna may not invite me back next time. So what surprised me most through an education and healthcare lens? So I looked at the things that Bobby just talked about with people and culture and the Soybean population. Notably, Iowa experienced a 4.7% growth in its population between 2010 and 2020, which contrasts with the country's average of 7.4%. Now that was surprising to me because those of you who know me, you know that I love Iowa and I wanted one. The second area was people and culture and diversity, equity, and inclusion. Now, I don't proclaim to be an expert in DEI initiatives. So it was intriguing to observe that a majority of the leaders in the rural area thought that the current strategies, the practices were adequate. However, our colleagues over in the suburban and urban area thought that we needed change or needed to work on it. We didn't have adequate strategies. Worth noting, though, that there was a substantial increase in the Iowa Diversity Index, which climbed, listen to me now, from 21% in 2010 to 30.8% in 2020. So that's a round of applause right there. That's awesome. Now, how do I tell you that the College of Health Sciences, it is our goal as a college to mirror the community, the demographics of the Des Moines area. And I'm proud to report this evening that we do a great job at the student level. We are mirroring the community that we're serving in terms of our demographics. Now on our staff and our faculty, well, we have work to do. So we have to be intentional about our practices. So that's my response, what surprised me. Number 2, what was the most prominent area of concern when thinking about education and healthcare? So again, people and culture. A substantial majority of Iowa leaders expressed concerns regarding the necessity for alteration in Iowa's existing workforce strategies and practices to meet the state's workforce demands in 2023. Approximately 20% of Iowa leaders hold concerns about the possibility that Iowa may struggle to meet its workforce requirements, or that these needs will persist and despite Iowa's current workforce strategies and practices, specifically in the domains of education, that's where I live, and in health and wellness, it is evident, absolutely evident that addressing Iowa's workforce demands will entail modifications to the current workforce strategies and practices. Now, my main responsibility, being the head of the college, is to develop healthcare workforce. That's what we do. The decline in undergraduate college enrollment that significantly sped up during the pandemic, resulting in the loss of nearly 1.4 million students, or approximately 9% of total enrollment from spring of 2019 to spring 2023. An educated workforce is crucial to enhancing prospects in the critical domains, the people and culture, the business opportunities, and infrastructure. So delays in improving education and increasing accessibility have enduring consequences on individual lives. That's all of us. Now, my last question here was, what are the top priorities for Iowa's leaders to focus on for the state's advancement? So, of course, it is truly social infrastructure. I agree that it's workforce and population growth. So let me talk about the survey. So according to the survey, 55% of Iowa leaders believe that enhancing health, social infrastructure, and 65% of them think that improving education, social infrastructure will necessitate changes in current strategies and practices. So, healthcare services, we have to be mindful that the availability and accessibility of healthcare facilities, hospitals, clinics, medical professionals, quality of healthcare services, and the ability to meet the healthcare needs of the population is paramount. It's important. We also got to be mindful about the education arm. The state of educational institution, including our K-12, our colleges, our universities, access to quality education, especially underserved and in rural areas, is very important. Funding and resources for schools and educational programs are equally important. Now, we must not forget that we have an aging population. So we have to think about elderly care and long-term care. So availability of long-term care facilities and services for elderly, we must not overlook. Concerns about the aging population and the need for senior care options must be top of mind. Now, let me close. For 124 years, Mercy College of Health Sciences has been dedicated to training healthcare professionals. In fall 2022, Iowa Workforce Development reported over 4,500 online job ads for registered nurses. While there are 50,000 plus active licensed RNs, with 41% aged 50 or older, and 22% eligible to retire. Now, the Bureau of Labor Statistics 2022 predicts that 9% RN employment growth from 2020 to 2030. Let me stop to tell you, the data shows that by 2030, the #1 job that will be needed in the state of Iowa is not president of Mercy College of Health Sciences, it is nursing. And let me tell you, Mercy College of Health Sciences is Iowa's largest nursing program in the state. And we are ready to take on that challenge to serve the needs of our Iowans. Thank you.
Thank you all. All right, Matt, I'm gonna give you the option. You can come up and say, I don't want to stop anybody. No. Yeah, you do. Please give Matt a nice come up.
I just apologize for saying that, because mine is not the very that good, so. I just want to thank everybody for the opportunity to come here and speak with you today. Thank you for giving, the platform for me to come and speak really on behalf of the Iowa farmer that's out there in the rural community. I work at the Iowa Soybean Association. We represent 44,000 farmers across the state that predominantly live in the rural areas. And today I'm going to talk a little bit about the ag and the energy section of this. You might be asking, why is this guy in the Soybean Association going to cover energy? It doesn't really necessarily fit. And a combination of it is a little bit of my background coming out of the bioenergy sector before I came to come work directly for the ag sector. But I really do see, and I'm very thankful that the group offered gave me the ability to talk about these sectors, because I do see this really important convergence coming together. It really started 20 years ago when we started making biofuels. But I think it's hard to go out and listen to the news today or go out in the rural countryside and not realize that Iowa is becoming an energy powerhouse. Whether it's from the wind generation assets that are across northwest Iowa and into central Iowa, we're the #1 producer of ethanol, biodiesel, into renewable natural gas. And we got a numerous amounts of infrastructure projects. So like the other presenters, I'm going to both cover what I saw as an urgent challenge, a concerning challenge, and then both a surprising opportunity. I really see going forward for people my age, everybody else in this room, this energy transition that we're going to go through is going to be one of the greatest opportunities that this state has. We have the resources that everybody else is going to want to have. We have talented folks here. We have abundant natural resources that are going to need to be deployed, whether that's through the wind energy that's out in the countryside, the biomass that we can grow in these farm fields that we can deploy for other things. But as we go forward, I think the thing that's the most urgent challenge that I see is, very candidly, we're having I'll call it a knee-jerk kind of opposition to further development of infrastructure in this state. It is something that concerns me a great deal. And that's everything from continued expansion of these renewable generation assets to frankly things like the carbon dioxide pipeline. I know that that's kind of a third rail issue in this state, and I'm not up here speaking on behalf of it for the Iowa Soybean Association, but this is a very critical piece of infrastructure that's not only going to serve our current energy and fuel system, but what we're trying to build in the future. And so why do I think that this is the most urgent concern? Because I think that these assets, the steel on the ground projects that we can build that kind of unlock these high-paying jobs or higher-paying jobs are going to predominantly be deployed in these rural areas across the state. And that is really where we need to be building and focusing our time on, in my opinion. I heard somebody else say up here, and I didn't comment earlier, the growth of central Iowa, the growth of Des Moines, the growth of the 380 corridor, it's been great to the state. But we could maybe argue that it has been almost zero-sum for the state. I come from a very small town. I moved to central Iowa. I don't see an opportunity for me to move back to my hometown, very frankly. My entire family did the same thing. So this is why I think one of the most urgent things that we can address, how can we continue to build these projects in rural Iowa? How can we make sure that these jobs are going to be available? And to honestly try to come back and pump some lifeblood into some of these communities that we have maybe not left aside, but we haven't paid as much attention to. And that leads into, and I think it's related to what my concern is, and I think Kavi did a great job hitting on it, but it's the social infrastructure. Many parts of this, I see people my age that are leaving these small towns because frankly, they don't have the social safety net or the social opportunities there for them. For example, if their parents aren't there to take care of their kids when both parents are working, what are they going to do for child care? I think that's just one example. But same with healthcare, same with services. I mean, even down to a basic grocery store. And this is why I come back to, I think the most urgent concern that we have is to continue to drive economic development in these, get the big projects done so that the secondary services come along with it. And in that vein, one of the other things that came out and stood out of the report for me was the need for workforce development. I thought it was very interesting, the survey, the sectors of the economy that were surveyed, that really said that not only do we need changes in policy to help drive this expansion or workforce engagement, but the type of skills that they were going to need was so diverse. You saw groups like technology who really said, we really need policy change. But then you saw that same level of desire for change from the manufacturing and the building trades. And to me, this just speaks to the really broad challenge that we're going to have as leaders, is to not only retain these young minds in these states, but to get them the appropriate training that they're going to need, and ultimately give them the skills that they're going to need to hopefully move back to a town that's 3,000, 5,000, 10,000 people, and to drive economic development there. Just in closing, some of the things I found the most surprising, like Adreain, I found the population growth to be actually pretty surprising. I didn't think it would be frankly as high as it was, and I'm glad to see that, while it's not tracking the national averages, it is outpacing our peers. But at the same time, I do have to juxtapose that against this challenge that we're going to have, which is if populations are growing, what's happening between this time that these populations are growing and then the workforce deployment? There's a gap there. And whether it's primary education or secondary education and getting these folks the right skills, I think that's one of the really critical pieces that we're going to have to work to address, both to fix some of these traditional hard infrastructure issues as well as the social infrastructure issues. But I don't want to leave it on a negative note. When I did read the survey, I came away incredibly encouraged, and I was very glad that there's this group of leaders that are getting together, as Debi said, to have these very honest conversations. Because if we don't have these honest conversations, I don't know that we're going to get to where we need to go and to do what we need to for our fellow Iowans. So, thank you.
Thank you, Matt. Lauren, you're up. Lauren Burt, let's give a warm up.
Thank you to all of you for being here this evening and all the panelists. Very honored to be up here with you, and I'm going to cover manufacturing. Overall, the report to me was great because I think it provided a lot of really current, crucial data that sometimes is hard to come by, especially looking at economic development and how we look at our business world, our rural world, and the state of Iowa. I was very pleasantly surprised to see there was a strong focus on that social infrastructure and the challenges like population growth and workforce. Those are two things that at Kemin we think about a lot. And sometimes the social infrastructure is not always brought into the strategy when looking at business and looking at economic development. As Kavi said, I appreciated the theme of cautious optimism that was in the report. Throughout the survey, a positive for the manufacturing world is that one of the core industries being manufacturing in Iowa, leaders were positive about the opportunities that would be there. For those of you that are not familiar with Kemin, we're a B2B global ingredient company. Some of our ingredients people don't know, but I bet you know Tyson, Starbucks, and Nestle. So those are the customers that we serve not only in the US, but globally. And the majority of our workforce around the world are manufacturing employees. They are the ones that supply the global food supply chain, which is quite critical. So what concerns me the most is the population growth and the workforce challenges in the state. In June, there were 600,000 US manufacturing jobs that were unfulfilled. And that is a serious issue, not only for Kemin, but for Iowa, all of us as consumers, and the economy as well. Another number that's quite shocking, looking at 2030, it's estimated that 2 million vacant manufacturing jobs will be in the US. Again, that's a serious issue when we look at how crucial it is to focus on industries that serve the need. However, there's a silver lining. The opportunity that I see actually comes from the pandemic. For the first time ever,
manufacturing, global supply chain, procurement was top of mind to everyone as we waited for our Amazon packages, and we couldn't go through the grocery store, nobody could buy a car, all these things that happened, but it really brought it to the public awareness. And people started to know how they received their food or products. And I think for the first time, manufacturing was really popular and global supply chain and procurement. So I think based on that, the wide exposure that the general public has based on the trauma of the pandemic, I think that that's an opportunity to seize on. I recently read there has been an ongoing uptick in students in high school, college, and trade registering for classes in manufacturing, global supply chain, and procurement than ever before. And I think that's an opportunity, whether it be companies like Kemin to have an apprenticeship to bring people in to learn on the job. There's a 90% chance someone who does an apprenticeship at a company will stay. That's a huge opportunity for Kemin and so many other manufacturing companies. Also, working with public-private, very important, and education as well. How do we work on not just focusing on a four-year institution? How do we look at community colleges? How do we look at trade schools? What are students in high school doing? Or what about the people that are not in any of those schools? How do we reach them? How do we train them? Obviously, these jobs are incredibly stable because the world continues to grow. We're going to need more cars, more food, more microchips, all of those things. So in closing, regardless of industry or rural or urban, we have to really ensure that Iowa is a place that people want to live and work. And we have to make sure that it is a state, a land of opportunity. And without a growing population, our workforce, we can't make that happen. So how do we really focus on that? Not only manufacturing, but all of you in the room tonight, which is why you're here. As the saying goes, you can't make a change until you identify the issue. And I'm incredibly grateful, and Kemin and other community leaders and partners and businesses, that this survey exists because we need the data, because we need to know what the issues are. And looking at that, we have the dialogue, the authentic conversation that Debi talked about earlier, to really move those issues forward and to know the sentiment. Some of it's really positive, some of it's not. So how do we get ahead of it now and have those conversations and use this real-time data to make Iowa the incredible place to live and work, not only for us, but people we can attract. And I applaud the business record for taking on this type of survey project. It's not easy to get people involved and to get that type of data, but it's crucial so that we can all work together to really make a better future for Iowa. Thank you.
Go ahead, Dental Nation.
I just realized something as I was listening to Lauren speak. I'm between all of you at the bar. I know this is a conversation at the table afterwards, but I'm literally between you and going back to the bar. So I'll be brief. I often joke with people that when the Chamber of Commerce and Economic Development Organization, I'm a paid optimist. But I'll tell you that I'm truly optimistic human being. I'm from Minnesota. I'm a Minnesota Viking fan. Believe me, I'm not. And I'm also not the direction of Iowa State University had the privilege to play athletics at Iowa State. So every year I think the Iowa State football program should have a whale of the season. So we all probably know where that's at, right? For years I've said in my community, the communities I serve, that there's never been a better time than right now to do economic development, to be in economic development in the communities that I serve. And I still believe that, and yet I'm surprised at the optimism and the cautious optimism that came from the survey. And the reason I say that is that I think if you live where all of us live, things are pretty good. But if you drive around our state, between more of our urban centers, if you will, means that term loosely here in our state, there's some communities that are really, really struggling. So I think that's going to address my map a little bit too. But I think the entire state needs to thrive. Oftentimes when good things happen in Des Moines Metro, people in my market will say, well, I wish that had happened to you. And I'll say, well, sure, but Ames needs Des Moines and the Des Moines Metro to thrive. You have to have Des Moines thrive. Downtown Des Moines thriving is good for the entire region and frankly for the entire state. What you folks did today with breaking ground on the turbine, I flew at 11 o'clock last night, and I can already see the vision you have for that project. That would be fantastic for our state. So congratulations. Thanks to all of you, your leadership. It's imperative for all of our communities to have a thriving Des Moines and other points. What concerns me the most are the things you've already heard about: housing, childcare. And if you think about the programs that have come out of the governor's office in the last few years, there's been considerable dollars allocated to those things. And those things are helpful, but we'll always need more. At the same time, and you heard a lot this evening as well, is general population. We have to grow. The only way we will get through a lot of things that we're talking about, and all the nursing positions that are open, and all the manufacturing jobs that we're talking about, is by growing. I will not get this exactly right, but there's a statistic that rolls around that only 2 states in the union have doubled their size of population since 1900. And Iowa is one of them. That really bums me out. It really does, because I want to be part of really a thriving place to do business, a thriving place to live and raise families, and attract new investment. And if you live in the Des Moines Metro or the Ames MSA, generally speaking, we attract those things. We attract those opportunities for meaningful employment opportunities and significant capital investment. But there's other parts of our state that are not enjoying the same level of activity. One of the things that I gotta be really careful here. One of the things that I really thought a lot about is we need to agree as a state, as local elected officials, and city councils, and county supervisors, state legislatures, the growth is good. We need to grow, and we need to put policies in place to grow this state. And the path to doing that is widespread across our state. I've mentioned that. I've been through rural Iowa a lot lately for some reason, and it's a stark reminder of how good it is in my community, but it's not good in a lot of other places. Most urgent, so that's probably the most urgent issue I see leaders needing to address is how do we figure that out? And I can give you specific examples. Director Durham and I talked a lot about different projects and opportunities, not only in my market, but across the state, where if we had very progressive economic development strategies related to large-scale manufacturing facilities, large-scale opportunities for more capital investment, more meaningful employment opportunities, that would be helpful. Incentives aren't the only game in the economic development business. It's also livable communities. And we have to continue to push livable communities. We need to be a more welcoming state. And I know we're moving up the index, and that's great, but we have to do more. Talk to your tech companies and talk to them about how their people feel about living in Iowa. We need to do better. We need to do more. And at the federal level, this is an issue that we really can't fix, but you can talk to your federal elected officials. And I've been doing this for a long time, almost 30 years. And I've been in DC a million times, it seems. And no matter who's in charge out there, they'll say, well, it's the other side, and let's get immigration reform done. Well, we need immigration reform. And this may sound a little ignorant right now, what I'm about to say. It's not meant to be. But immigration reform isn't just about the border. I respect and understand the border. We don't live in a border city where we're dealing with those issues. But immigration reform in Iowa is when President Wendy Winterstein hands out a degree to a person from another country, there's a green card attached to it. It says, you can stay. We need those people to stay. They come here for a terrific education, and not just to Iowa, all across our country. This would be a home run for everybody if we can figure out how to keep the people that we educate at our nation's universities, we can keep them in our businesses. And I know a number of companies in my market and here in the Des Moines Metro face issues with H-1B, visas expire, people have to go home. And most of those people want to stay. And so we need to figure that out at the federal level, but at the state level, I think we can always do more to invest in local communities and certainly being more welcoming state. In closing, I would just simply say that Debbie mentioned it, and I talk about this all the time. As Iowans, we have tremendous access. We have tremendous access to elected officials at the local, state, and federal level. But that also means you have access to getting involved yourselves. And so if I give you one thing, if I give you one thing today, it's that you're all here because you're engaged. You're all here because you care. We need all of you, all of us, collectively to step up and engage in our communities and our state even more. Because that's probably the biggest gap we have right now. We've got a lot of great leadership in place. We'll always need more. I'll stop there. Thanks for having me tonight. Thanks for the business record, and thanks for my fellow activists.
All right, we're gonna go rapid fire at the tables. So we were hoping to give you a few more minutes at the table to talk, but what we'd love you to do is spend about 3 to 4 minutes at your table, go around the table and quickly give your one takeaway from tonight's event, something that you think you're gonna help take back to your office, to your communities. Go ahead and spend 3 to 4 minutes, and Suzanne can come up here and wrap us up.
Category.
Okay, everybody, did you have a great conversation? Okay, everybody. Together, thank you. So, it would have been wonderful to have even more table talk. I think next year we're gonna build a ton of that in, because I heard just even in, 4 minutes over at the table I was at, people really talking about, really digging into are their voices at the table, talking about DEI in urban and rural areas. What does it really look like in terms of immigration and bringing people into the state? What does this mean for manufacturing? Bringing up questions about education. Where are we finding people that come to Iowa? So ultimately, what we are trying to do here with Envision Iowa is this. We are providing data. We want to facilitate dialogue, but at the end of the day, it's you, the leaders in the room, that are going to need to come together, all of us, to say, what are aligned strategies that we can get behind? How do we start prioritizing one step at a time with all the different things happening, but how do we aim forward? So a couple of reminders before I go. There is a survey in the business record, the executive summary, but the QR code will take you to the full survey. It'll take you to a landing page, and then you have to click on something else to download. That's very long, but it's very interesting. So if you like data, you are going to love that. And thank you again to Bâton Global. It is really thrilling to me that we have world at some point. So, in terms of business publications, thank you for being here. We invite you to become a member or a subscriber of our products. Consider featuring your organization or your community in our products. If you've got stories, we want to hear about this cool, amazing, innovative stuff that's happening around Iowa. You can do that either going to businessrecord.com, sign up, or dsmmagazine.com. But I want to thank our sponsors. Thank you again to IEDA, Iowa Business Council, the Des Moines Airport Authority. Congratulations again to all of you. And the Iowa Credit Union League, along with all of our corporate sponsors today, for making this event possible. Thanks to all of you who attended today. But what I really want to leave you with is that we know so many folks are working diligently on programs, on innovations and initiatives. Some of you are elected officials, some of you are volunteers, but you are all leaders, and you are trying to help Iowa thrive and grow. And what we learned today is that we need to work together. We need to build and support the work that is happening, creating new or enhanced strategies, and to align towards common goals and action to move Iowa forward. I think through partnership, we can be stronger together. That sounds like the tagline for many, many different organizations, but there's a reason. So we're going to be taking this information. We're going to look how we take it forward in 2020 so we can continue to envision Iowa as a thriving state and take vision to action to reality. So thank you for being here tonight. Stay tuned.